Hello everybody, this is TipTop MTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, we have some more spoilers for Strixhaven. So generally what they do before the giant launch of a set is they reveal the planeswalkers of it, or at least a couple planeswalkers of it, so that going into the set we have a little bit, or the set announcement, we have a little bit of background information. So in the past, they've already revealed that Will and Rowan will be planeswalkers within Strixhaven as students. However, it looks like today we have two teachers that happen to be planeswalkers, and it's kind of interesting. And actually, last Friday, Mark Rosewater posted his hints about the set, and these actually happen to fill, I think, multiple of those hints. And so that'll be kind of interesting to look at. I have not actually read the cards yet, so this will kind of be my live reaction to them. So let's jump into this. We also, by the way, have some news about Commander. It's not a ton, but we are going to talk about that as well. First, let's talk about Kasmina, Enigma Sage. It's a 3-cost Simic Mythic Legendary Planeswalker. A little bit scared to read this just because in the past 3-cost Simic Mythics have been kind of terrifying, especially when they're in Planeswalker form, but we'll have to see. She starts with 2 loyalty, which is very reasonable for 3 mana, but she has the ability, each other planeswalker you control has the loyalty abilities of Kasmina, Enigma Sage. So, I mean, this makes sense from a lore perspective. If she's being a teacher here, it makes a lot of sense that she's kind of passing on her abilities to other planeswalkers. So I think that's really, really interesting, and it may hint at maybe more than usual planeswalkers in the set. Maybe we see them in the rare slot, 1 for each school, but yeah, so she's going to give her abilities on to other characters, which I think is really cool. So she has a +2 that's Scry 1, so not very powerful necessarily, but the fact that you can give any planeswalker a +2 can be pretty good. I mean, you pair this with something like Garruk from Throne of Eldraine, where his ultimate is very close to his actual, like, starting loyalty, but it's hard to get those first couple loyalty counters on him because you have to get the wolves to spawn and then you have to kill the wolves. Instead, you can use Kasmina, so maybe we see some kind of niche uses there. Maybe some planeswalkers that, you know, they are maybe 2 away from their ultimate when they enter. Maybe they can use this. I think the fact that it is a +2 does make it pretty powerful, and I think just because of that, some planeswalker decks, like not planeswalker decks like the standard product, but the like decks that have planeswalkers as their main idea and theme, may want to use this card as a kind of a pre kind of thing. And then she has a -X, create a 0 green or 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, put X+1/+1 counters on it. This one's pretty good, kind of in the opposite use case. If you have a planeswalker that maybe can add a lot of loyalty counters, for instance, Nissa from Zendikar Rising, who gets loyalty counters every time you play a land, it's going to be very easy for her to maybe -8 and you get an 8/8. Now, this is kind of interesting. It's one of the first times that I'm aware of where we kind of, you know, it's very often that the first ability will be card advantage. That's kind of true here. Scrying is a form of card advantage. The minus ability will either be removal or creature creation. That is true here. And then the ultimate will be a pretty big ability. Now, note, this starts at 2 loyalty, so getting up to 8 is pretty hard. But remember, other planeswalkers can have her ult as well. So it says, search your library for an instant or sorcery card that shares a color with this planeswalker. It's worded this way so that if other planeswalkers activated, it makes sense. Exile that card, then shuffle. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. So you get an instant or sorcery for free. You know, honestly, I think this is pretty good. I mean, there are some very, very powerful but expensive instants and sorceries, especially some that maybe interact with planeswalkers necessarily. It's not the most powerful ult I've ever seen, but you do have to remember we have things like Nissa in the game who can get up to 8 loyalty very quickly by just dropping lands into play. And so I wouldn't be surprised, you know, Nissa seems to work really well with all of these. You know, you're probably not using the +2 here, but she can, you know, minus herself to create blockers, and then her ult is kind of easy to get to, and then maybe you go and find yourself an ultimatum or something like that, which would share a color. So I think that with the ultimatums and Nissa, this could actually be something kind of interesting. I don't know if it'll necessarily be the most powerful thing in the world, but I personally love the passive abilities on Planeswalkers. And we're going to talk about that here really quickly, and I hope we see it more in the future. They were first introduced with the War of the Spark Planeswalkers, and I think some of them are a little powerful for War of the Spark, like in our set, for instance, in Teferi, but I think that it allows them to be more interesting. To me, I don't really care about a Planeswalker who, here, I can probably name a blue Planeswalker without knowing it. +1, draw a card, -3, bounce something, ultimate, at the beginning of your end step, draw 3 cards or something, or at the beginning of your, whenever you cast a creature spell, bounce something. You know, like, it's essentially draw a card, removal or creature, and then win the game with an ult. But when you have these abilities on Planeswalkers like Nissa from Zendikar Rising, like even Tyvar from Kaldheim we just had, and now Kasmina, we're starting to see that they're putting a lot more abilities on these Planeswalkers, and I really like it because it makes each one feel unique. It's like there's a ton of creatures in Magic, but a lot of them feel super unique because of their abilities, but Planeswalkers are very limited in their design potential without these passive abilities. So that's something I want to ask you guys. Do you like passive abilities on Planeswalkers? I'm also probably going to do a poll about it. So go over to my community tab. You can answer it there as well. Either way, we have one more, and this is Professor Onyx. Now, I said I didn't read the cards, and that is true. I have no idea what she does, but I did look at them. Look, this is the hint. We got the hint of you're going to see a Planeswalker in a way you've never seen them before. So Professor Onyx, it's a 6-cost black legendary Planeswalker Liliana. Now, this is new for a couple reasons. First, Professor Onyx, you know, I don't know if her last name was Onyx already or whatever, but this is one of the first times, if I'm not mistaken, that the creature or the Planeswalker type was not in the title. And actually, something I guess Royal Scions. Royal Scions was the other example of not having the Planeswalkers in the title, which ironically the Royal Scions are kind of in this set. But yeah, so keep that in mind that this is Liliana here. It's just not Liliana. It's not the, name Liliana. And so I think that's really interesting to see. Maybe we'll see that more in the future, where instead of it being Liliana Professor Onyx, it will just be Professor Onyx, and it will have the type of Liliana, which I think can be confusing to new players, but I don't think there's enough like Planeswalker type tribal to really make that matter. That's just kind of there. It allows her to kind of be kind of a disguise, which I assume is what's happening here, but it's also a disguise in like card form, so I think that's kind of interesting. Either way, she's a 6-cost black legendary Planeswalker Liliana with 5 loyalty. So 5 loyalty for 6 mana, not amazing, but she has a passive ability, Magecraft, so that seems like it's going to be a new mechanic. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Okay, so we're going to a school of wizards and witches and whatever. So instant and sorcery tribal is probably going to be a big part of that. So it seems like Magecraft is just going to be whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, do something. And so that seems to be one of our mechanics. The thing is, it seems vague enough where I don't see this necessarily being a guild-based mechanic or a school-based mechanic. I predicted that each school would have a mechanic, but maybe they're trying to differentiate it from Ravnica where that is the case. So maybe we just see some overarching mechanics and then some maybe heavy themes. So yeah, whenever you cast or copy an instant sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. In terms of ability, that is pretty good. I mean, it turns any infinite cast ability, like it turns infinite combos on for anything that allows you to like maybe play something and then bounce it back to your hand. This allows you to just win the game. It's also just really good value. You are going to slowly chip away at your opponent's life total and you gain 2 life. This also is a win con for infinite combos when it comes to infinitely copying a spell. For those of you who don't know, if you play a spell and then copy the spell and then copy the spell you use to copy the spell, you can form an infinite loop where you infinitely copy things, and then Liliana here is going to kill your opponent. Now, I do want to say, Liliana has not really ever cared about instants and sorceries, so it's kind of interesting to see her in this new light. Either way, you can then +1, and it says you lose 1 life. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. So you lose a life, look at the top 3 cards of the library, put 1 of them in your hand. So basically +1, draw a card, but it's more selective. But it also puts things in your graveyard. So in a deck that wants to mill yourself, this is pretty good. And then -3, each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. So you don't have to do this. And then -8, each opponent may discard a card. If they don't, they lose 3 life. Repeat this process 6 more times. Alright, so this kind of, again, follows the traditional style of Planeswalker, plus ability that's card advantage, minus ability that's removal, and an ultimate that can just win you the game. I mean, if they have no cards in hand, which I could see this maybe going in a discard controlled kind of deck, they are just losing 18 life, which isn't the most devastating thing we've seen, and she is pretty far away from that ult, but yeah, this seems kind of like a weird Planeswalker in my opinion. I mean, the passive ability is saying play instance and sorceries, the +1 is saying play graveyard tribal, the minus ability is saying play control, and the -8 ability is saying play discard. So I guess you're playing instant and sorcery, discard, control, self-mill? I mean, you don't have to obviously do every aspect of this, but this card seems like it's trying to do a lot of things, and it is kind of expensive for not necessarily bad payoff, but I just don't know how much I would be excited to play this one. I mean, even her passive ability is kind of just generic, and it's not one of those passive abilities that boosts the Planeswalker and creates a cool interaction. Like, for instance, with our friend over here, Kasmina, or for Nissa, or for even Tyvar. Tyvar is a little bit closer to what we have here, but this just seems like a random effect thrown on here versus not something that necessarily synergizes with the rest of the card. But I do see maybe in... That's just so expensive. Maybe you see some sort of discard tribal where you're using instants and sorceries to make your opponent discard. You get a little bonus off of that. You're able to refill your hand, maybe kill them with the ultimate if you can get up to it, and then just control their board. But I'm not necessarily sure. Now, the next part I wanted to quickly talk about is Commander. They did not, there was a Good Morning Magic where they didn't reveal too much. However, they did reveal that the commanders will not be the Elder Dragon. So it was revealed that Elder Dragons kind of founded each school. And so a lot of people thought, oh, Elder Dragon Highlander, they're going to, they have decks specifically for that. They're going to put the Elder Dragons as the commander. But no, they announced that it will be teachers at the schools. And so they kind of revealed each of those teachers there. But that means the Elder Dragons are not there, meaning they will probably be in the set, probably taking the slot of Mythics, representing each 2-color combination. So be prepared for those. We got 2 spoilers. My big prediction as to why, also I keep saying I'm very sorry for that. The reason why they revealed 2 Planeswalkers is so that MTG Arena on Thursday can have an update where they add these pre-order bundles. And they will make it the Professor Onyx pre-order bundle and the Kasmina pre-order bundle. And the reason they're not revealing Will and Rowan, because that would make way too much sense for them to do a Will bundle and a Rowan bundle. They are literally always paired together. The reason they're not doing that is because it's obviously a modal double face card, and they don't necessarily want to reveal that yet, and they can't. It's kind of weird to have one be a modal double face card and one not be. So that's my prediction as to why we didn't see them as the front 2. It would have made sense. They already had revealed the characters. They had, they are kind of bound together. They are the box art. It would have made a lot of sense for them to be there, but they're not. And I think that there's a big reason for that. So I think that pretty much confirms that they will be a modal double face card. So yeah, guys, these are the 2 Planeswalkers. I want to know, which one do you think is better? I personally think Kasmina has a lot more room to play and do some fun stuff with, versus Liliana just feels like kind of a big, expensive black Planeswalker that's doing, everything black does. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe to stay up to date with everything Magic. I will see you in the next one. Bye.